Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining for another live show. You'll notice that I didn't start with the traditional yelling of the yes, the traditional keeping Karlsson yelling of the yes. That's because Brian is here and he's going to do a commercial read, and then we'll start the show.
I don't know if Dave Fortnite is watching. He tweeted us 6 minutes ago, asked if we were going live or what.
All right, well, here we are. We're live. We are live, correct?
Yeah, we're live right now.
We're not talking fantasy hockey yet, but we are live.
We've gone live.
Oh, I didn't start my program. Okay, I'm starting that too.
Are you ready for the pre-roll?
You're doing the pre-roll.
Yeah, are you ready for me to start it?
Start my program. Okay, start it now.
This episode of Keeping Karlsson is sponsored in part by FanDuel. Hockey's here, which means daily fantasy hockey on... Oh, it's SeatGeek. Shoot.
Oh, no.
Wow. It's
That would
okay.
have been embarrassing.
I have that pre-roll ready too. That would have been a really bad mistake. Okay. Uh-oh.
Oh, man.
Okay.
Okay.
Here we go again. Take 3. Let me just make sure I've got this.
Oh, my God. You said you were ready.
I thought I was, but then I prepared with the wrong pre-roll.
Okay. Hi, Alex. Okay. Take 4.
Okay. Here we go. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Hockey Podcast is sponsored in part by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to live events. With SeatGeek's seamless mobile experience, you can buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps. And SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. Better yet, Keeping Karlsson listeners save $20 off their first purchase by entering the promo code KEEPING at checkout. SeatGeek, the better way to buy tickets.
Cool. Wow. What a pro. Okay. Let's go.
Take 5.
No, this is take 1, and I'm going to nail it on the first take, obviously. Ready? Teuvo Teravainen! That's actually how his name was pronounced. Teuvo. I just learned that today. I was watching the game. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the best fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by 2 guys who 1.0 Erik Karlsson in their keeper pools, one of whom does, again, own Erik Karlsson in his keeper pool. That's me. I'm your host, Dylan Dabrowski. With me, as always, the fantasy hockey robot himself, Brian Com.
Hey, Elon. Hey, everyone. I'm a little tentative. I feel like you're setting me up. I'm about to walk right into something by saying there was no yes in that opening.
I said yeah. It was like very similar. Teuvo, yes.
Oh, little too subtle. I'm glad we clarified. Anyway, welcome everyone to another episode. I can't wait to get started.
Well, then, how about we do that? We've got a huge slate of players to discuss on this week's show. Normally, I start with like injuries and outjuries, but I'm just going to go right into hot streaks this week, Brian. We're going to start hot. But before we do that, let's mention the hottest fantasy hockey website out there, and that's DobberHockey.com. They've got all the info you need to be successful at fantasy hockey. You know, the daily ramblings. Every day you're getting a write-up of what happened the previous day and what's the fantasy impact. Then all these other articles, all the tools like the starting goalies, the line combinations, which update in real time, which is so useful. Definitely check it out, DobberHockey.com. But okay, Brian, let's start with, you guys know who I'm going to start with because I yelled his name. And his team is the Carolina Hurricanes. Let's just talk about the whole Hurricanes team because they went crazy this week. My opponent has like 6 of them in the couple, so it hasn't been a great week for me. But yeah, this line especially on Carolina of Sebastian Aho, Jordan Stahl, and Teuvo Teravainen, they've been going insane. Like, let's talk about these guys one at a time, because we've got a lot to discuss with these people. I feel like a lot of people's thoughts of these Carolina guys has changed over the past week, and now we've got Wet Blanket Brian, who's going to remind us all not to, look at a small sample size and read too much into it. But okay, so Aho, first of all, he was the one we were most excited about of the 3 going into the season. He started the season really slow, but he now, with his game today where he had 1 goal and 2 assists versus the Islanders, he has 4 goals and 9 assists in his last 10 games. So huge recent stretch for Aho. Teravainen had a huge 3-goal, 1-assist game versus Dallas back on the 13th, and 2 goals and 1 assist today. Overall, has 14 points in his last 10. Then you have Jordan Staal on one of his trademark runs. Seems like he does this every year where he's quiet and then just like bursts out. He has 10 points in his last 10 games after a slow start. Brian, can we look into each of these guys and discuss what to expect moving forward? Like, Aho was dropped in a couple of shallower leagues that I'm in. Brian, in our joint league, he was dropped like at the beginning of this week. We look like geniuses. We made a waiver claim on him. We had the #1 priority. We hemmed and hawed, oh, should we waste our priority on him? Super glad we did. He's been amazing. He had 49 points last year. Many projected like 60 points for Aho this year. And obviously with his slow start, people were starting to think, oh, maybe 60 is a bit high. Now he's on this run of 17 points in 19 games on the year overall. Do you think still approximately 60 is a reasonable expectation for Sebastian Aho, or should we even make that higher?
So I had him at 55 or 60 points, and when he was slumping, I still thought that's the pace he'd end up producing at. And then I actually just last week or the week before recently figured him to be back, maybe scale back to 55 points, because Carolina was being their usual non-offensive selves. And then this happened. So I guess what I'll do is I'll put him back at least a 55-point pace, up to 60 points, still somewhere in there. Carolina is still not a super offensive team. This whole line as a whole has been shooting well going into today's matches, which I actually haven't figured into this calculation. They had 11 goals on 71 shots on this little run they're on, which figures into about a 15.5% shooting percentage, which is too high. It should probably be about half that. So there'll be less points for all of them to go around. This is a lovely run. And Aho is the straw that stirs the drink in making this line click and produce. I'm sure of that. So of the three, he's going to have the best pace, but I still am reluctant to put him anywhere too high above a 55-point pace the rest of the way.
Wow, he's almost at a point per game now, but Brian, he's so stingy with his points. Okay, so I guess if you're saying he's your favorite, if we look at Teravainen now, he has been hyped for a long time. On our show, I remember we were hyping him back when he was on Chicago, saying just wait till this guy gets into the top 6, he's going to be something. Last year, kind of a disappointment in his first year on Carolina, only 42 points in 81 games. He's got now 19 and 19 so far after his 3-point game today. I guess I was going to ask you, is he a reasonable bet for 60 points this year? But assuming you only have Aho at closer to 55, I guess no?
A reasonable bet for Teravainen to hit 60, that really is a stretch to me. I'll say he's a reasonable bet for a 50-point pace the rest of the way. There's that wet blanket you predicted. This is a self-fulfilling prophecy, or some version of it. At the 50-point pace would still be a meaningful step forward for Teravainen. Keep in mind, he only just turned 23 at the start of this season, and 55 is a mark for him to aim for in the future, and there is upside for 60. I'm just not convinced that him becoming a 60-point player is what's happening right now. He had just 2 goals and nothing else over his first 7 games, and of course, last season you mentioned his point total was in the low 40s, and going into tonight, there were only 3 games in which he had scored a goal. Now 4 games, but he's scoring in bunches. Which doesn't really mean that he's going to be super streaky or that he's any more capable of scoring goals than someone else. It is just a way to point out that this hasn't been a steady outpour of goals. So that's why I am sticking closer to 50 points for him.
Boring. 50 points. That's basically free agent fodder. You're saying ride Teravainen while he's hot and then drop him as soon as he goes cold again. That sounds like what you're saying about him.
Pretty much.
Okay, well, good to know. And I guess you'll say the same about Jordan Staal. I know every year we talk about Jordan Staal, this amazing run. Every year you predict that he's going to slow down. You always bring up he has a super high shooting percentage or something. And every year you are right. So, Staal, at the end of the day, with all of his good runs that he's had, he's never had over 50 points in a season in Carolina. I was going to ask, is this potentially his year to do it? But I'm guessing you're going to say for sure no. He's currently on a 65-point pace with 15 points in 19 games, but obviously he's going to have to keep pace with the rest of his line. So I know what you're going to. You don't even have to say. You're going to say Jordan Staal, ride him while he's hot, and then dump him like a hot potato. Do you dump hot potatoes? I never get these analogies right. It's not even an analogy. I don't get any of my words right. Idiom. Right? Drop him like a. What do you drop him like? All right, just go. It's okay.
I don't know.
Jordan Staal.
Okay. Well, yeah, let me flip the question on you. Is this the year that Jordan Staal, exceeds his past production? Why would this be the year that Jordan Staal exceeds his past production. He does have two maturing scoring types who are rounding into form, Teravainen and Aho, good line mates to have. But like you said, Elon, even with the wild runs he's had in previous years, he's never surpassed 48 points, which makes me skeptical that he's going to do it this year. Mind you, some of that time, Jordan Staal was playing with Joakim Nordstrom and Andre Nestrasil, but other times he'd played with brother Eric and Elias Lindholm, who should be, about as good as Aho and Teravainen as line mates, although looking at the line's numbers, Aho and Teravainen are the best steady set of line mates that Jordan Staal has had in Carolina. The thing with anyone in Carolina is that the Hurricanes have had just one player crack 50 points in each of the last 3 years. It was Eric Staal once, then Jeff Skinner twice. So thinking that Jordan Staal is suddenly going to get to 60 points, that's a bit rich for me.
Well, I didn't say 60. I said, is he going to crack 50 for his first time? But yeah, I feel like you asked and answered the question. You said you're going to flip it on me, be like, why would he? And then you gave the exact reason, because Aho and Teravainen are clearly really, really good players. And Aho is looking like he's going to have a career year. Like, how could he not? Last year was his rookie year. Anyways, okay, asked and answered. Brian, since we're here, Justin Falk was pointless in 8 games going into today. I was ready to ask you all about if he's becoming a snoozer, but he broke out with 2 power play assists today. He only played 18 minutes and 48 seconds for what it's worth, so that's a little bit concerning. Like, he's not being used like a top defenseman, but clearly he is still the top power play defenseman, which is what we say every week when we talk about Justin Falk. It's like, he's still the top power play defenseman, so you have to expect points will come at some point. They came today. When's the next time they'll come? Are we going to have to wait another 8 games? Like, in general, like before today, were you thinking Falk owners could stream him out for some non-top power play guys who maybe help with peripherals? You have your Eric Johnsons, your Boychucks, even like on his team, like Slavin is doing pretty well, like has more points than Falk, or at least did going into today. Or would you still hold on to Falk no matter what, just because he's top power play and gives the shots and the hits?
You know me. I was not quite coming around to the point of thinking of dropping him if those like, Elon, did you name those options, like the top waiver wire defenseman options? Like, you had named a few when we were preparing for the show.
Right, like, if you would have just listened to, I mean,
you mentioned you mentioned Slavin, but I didn't hear Johnson or Boychuk. Okay,
just start your answer over. It's so awkward.
Yeah, I'm gonna start it over.
Okay.
You know me, Elon. Of course I wouldn't have dropped Falk yet. Not for those guys anyway, and I'll tell you why in a minute. There's no doubt it's been a terrible season for Justin Falk. When we last brought him up 2 weeks ago, because, well, it was not quite as bad 2 weeks ago because not as many games had passed with him doing nothing, I still remained optimistic, noting that Falk's shot rates were actually up, and there was but one low number, a 25% IPP, when we're used to seeing it at 50%, and that number explained why his offense has gone missing and why I thought it would return. And all that, even going into today's game where he did finally get some points, remained true, except that between last time and this time, that 25% IPP dipped down to an insanely low 15% IPP. That's abominable. It doesn't get that low even for like the worst guys you'd expect. So Falk just continued to not manage to get points on goals that were scored while he's on the ice. I believe that number will bounce back and that he'll bounce back. In the meantime, yeah, you are looking at a guy who, going into tonight, had just 3 points so far this year and who only had 37 points last year. Not a fantastic number. So if you think that that is something that's not going to be jumped on by your competition, I guess you can stream him out if you're in the sort of league where 35, 40-point defensemen are just kind of ignored in free agency, even though I think Falk's better than that. Maybe your fellow poolies in your league aren't quite aware of that. Though I do honestly think that Justin Falk still has a similar chance of producing as the Boychucks, the Eric Johnsons, and the Slavins, and that's why I wouldn't be dropping him. And that's why I wouldn't be dropping him. And I'm not getting bent out of shape about his power play time either. He's often been in like the 55% range as for the amount of his team's power play time that he gets. And he's there right now. And he had been for several games before the one where it went down below 50%, which happens like once every 5 or 6 games. And I think that's just like a line starting anomaly, like just the way the lines worked out for that game. So it's worth keeping an eye on, but not a trend until we see it happen a few games in a row. And just to clarify, I'm talking about that power play time share being below 50%. I expect it to stay above 50%. The thing that Falk has going for him is there really isn't anyone else on Carolina who's stepped up to prove themselves capable in that role.
Okay, sounds good. So far, no surprises. All the players playing hotter than they usually do. Brian saying they'll come down. All the players like Falk doing worse than they normally do. Brian saying they'll do better. Okay, let's see if we'll find some anomaly that you think might stay consistent as we continue with the show. I'm not sure if you're going to with this one, though, but I got to bring up another guy who, like Jordan Stahl, is known to go on runs and then go cold. Talking about Craig Smith over in Nashville. He's definitely enjoyed Kyle Turris joining the team, as his 1 goal and 1 assist yesterday brought him to 4 goals and 2 assists in his last 2 games. So really nice run for Craig Smith, who's probably still available to a lot of people in their free agencies. Smith has been playing on a line with Turris and Kevin Fiala on line 2, and has also been on the top power play with Arvidsson, Forsberg, Johansson, and PK Subban. So we'll get to that later. That's a bit of a surprise. But yeah, is it time for people to jump on Smith while he's on the top power play in Nashville? At one point, Smith looked like he could be fantasy relevant. Like back, I guess 4 seasons ago, he put up 52 points. But then after that, he steadily declined, like 43, then 37, then only 29 points last year. But now he's on line 2 with finally a good center in Nashville and Turris, and he's on the top power play. So that's pretty good, right?
Yeah, that's a pretty good situation for Craig Smith. And what happened between now and that season a few years ago, where he did make a good impression, was that his time on ice dipped into third liner territory. He started off by playing with Nick Spalling and David Legwand, and then actually got to play with Mike Ribeiro and Philip Forsberg for a little bit. But even then, he was not getting the time that you'd expect someone to be playing with Philip Forsberg to be getting after a 3-year decline in that ice time. It is coming back now. And also his power play time on ice. Last year, that disappeared almost entirely. It was cut in half down to about a minute per game. And this year, it's currently at a career high on average. So obviously, Craig Smith's production ebbs and flows with that deployment. His career high power play reduction was 20 points back in his rookie season. That's what he's going to need to get to be a 50-point player again.
Yeah, I definitely am not even so concerned about Smith being like a 50-point player or not. I'm more thinking, like, do you grab him now as a free agent to stream while he's on this top power play and on this nice run? Like, Brian, I'm curious, for a short-term streamer, who would you rather have between Kyle Turris and Craig Smith? Like, right now, like, Turris has a better track record, obviously, but like they're on the same line at even strength, and Smith is on the top power play while Turris isn't.
I see a logical path to either guy between Smith and Turris. If you need power play points, then go for the guy who's on that top unit, which is Craig Smith. Otherwise, I feel like Turris is the one I want, although you could work on the assumption that Smith will get similar even strength points as Turris because they're playing together, plus that power play deployment. So logically, Smith seems better still that way, but I still think that Kyle Turris is better at hockey. So it's hard to turn your back on him when he's out there. Smith, I also don't see this power play deployment lasting forever. So should you be making a move today that could have a better longer-term impact, Turris is the one that I would want.
Okay, well, I would be, if making a move for like the next week or two, or until Smith goes off the top power play, I'd take Smith. Why not? Okay, Turris has been fine. Anyways, some patience finally being rewarded for people who held on to the current Nashville top liners. We've got Victor Arvidsson, who has 5 goals and 3 assists in his last 7 games. I'm sure his owners didn't mind the news that Scott Hartnell's going to be out for a while, which means that top power play spot remains for Victor Arvidsson. It's weird that he wasn't there the whole season. Clearly, he's good there, right? And Ryan Johansson, oh, sorry. Actually, we were corrected in our Facebook group. Ryan Johansson. We're taking extra steps on this podcast to pronounce the names correctly. So we really appreciate it when people tell us that we're getting it wrong. Thanks to everyone also on Twitter at the end of the last episode. We got a lot of feedback. Anyways, Ryan Johansson finally had a strong showing with a goal and 2 assists versus Minnesota on Thursday. That performance was sandwiched by 2 goose eggs, but it's still nice to see that he can do something again. I'd currently be holding or adding him for now, since like the Nashville top line and top power play looks like last year's, where it went really well. So do you concur, even though Johansson hasn't totally like broken free and done amazing yet, he's still worth having just because he's on this top line and top power play?
That's something I've maintained all along. I know it's been a painful few weeks for Ryan Johansson owners, and so there's been a lot of like, hold the course, he's going to be in a good spot at the end of the day. So here he is, and of course I concur that what's happening now, you can be hopeful that it continues. And just to be clear, like, I'm not saying it was so obvious to hold him through the last slump. It was awful. It was really bad. And in some leagues, you probably could have streamed him out. If you did, add him back.
Yeah, I feel like when you're playing with Forsberg and Arvidsson, it's a good line. They did well last year. They should do well again this year. I don't see why not. Finally, let's take a look at this D on Nashville. I was shocked to see that PK Subban is on the top power play. That's like never happened. Sorry. That's like never happened. Yesterday versus Subban had 2 assists yesterday versus Colorado, including a power play assist. He still overall has been kind of quiet lately, so seems to me like maybe a good opportunity to buy low if PK Subban is now going to be the top power play defenseman. Is there any reason to think that this will or won't last? Like, what's going on over there?
It is really surprising because PK Subban has never been the power play one guy since coming to Nashville, even though that's what some of us hoped when the trade went down. I can't see any numerical reason for Roman Josi to have been swapped out for PK Subban. The Predators' power play seems to be running just about the same with either guy's quarterback, though it has enjoyed a healthier shooting percentage with Subban at the helm that I'm not sure he's responsible for himself. I'd be a little nervous if I'm a Roman Josi owner, but not terribly, but still enough to be reading the Nashville beat writers carefully to try and track the reasoning for the decision and any potential follow-through. I've sent out a tweet to Adam Vingan. He's a good guy to follow for that stuff. I will update you guys, or no. I guess we'll update by next week if this situation holds. You can tweet at him too. Why not? Let us know if you get an answer.
Well, Brian, we have a Twitter account, so if people follow us, maybe you could retweet his answer when he replies to you. How about that?
Of course.
Okay, so yeah, Roman Josi, yeah, on the downside, he's off the top power play. On the plus side, though, he has a goal and 3 assists in his last 4 games, 12 points in 16 games overall on the season. So obviously, Roman Josi still doing pretty great. So I wouldn't be too concerned, though. I would prefer he'd be on the top power play if I owned him. Like I said, maybe take a sniff for Subban now, especially if it turns out that Brian's retweet confirms that Subban's going to be staying there for a while. Actually, Brian, though, the Nashville D-man who has the most points over the past couple of weeks is Mattias Ekholm, who's on a 3-game point streak with goals in each game and 2 assists. Strangely, this has come with a decrease in blocks. He's only put up like 1 or 0 blocks in 8 of his last 9 games. So I guess this is one of these things you have to pay for. Like if you want to get points from Mattias Ekholm, you don't get blocks. If you want blocks, you don't get points. But anyways, is Ekholm as a free agent, is he someone you'd be jumping over? Anyway, if Ekholm is a free agent, would you be jumping on him right now while he's on this really great hot streak? He's on the second power play with Roman Josi. And I guess I also would ask like Ekholm over Falk, even though all my questions about Falk that I had planned sort of go out the window now that Falk had a good game. Maybe I put too much stock. Maybe I put too much stock. What's that? Maybe I put too much stock into like one good game. Like who cares that Falk had a good game? Falk is the same guy he was before, and you probably would have still said Falk over Ekholm, right?
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier for me to say Falk. Like I really was being tentative in all our notes to prepare for the show to try and figure out, can I really say Falk over this guy and over this guy because of how cold he'd been? It's easier now to say yes because, hey, something happened. Mattias Ekholm I see as a guy who has like Brent Seabrook type upside, which I know is such a downer for you. But for me, it remains at being like 35 points. More are possible, and it'll get you some peripherals along the way.
Okay, well, wait. Brent Seabrook upside is great for Brent Seabrook in his prime. Like, hopefully you're not saying he has Brent Seabrook circa 2017 upside. That sounds so exciting.
Well, that is what I'm saying. I think that's what Seabrook offers, and that's what Ekholm offers too.
Okay, well, Seabrook is owned in a lot of leagues, so I guess you should pick up Ekholm. So, Brian, sounds like you have Seabrook, so I guess you're going to be adding Ekholm if he's available to you, right?
He's not available.
What a shame. Okay, let's go to Chicago now. Looks like Nick Schmaltz is finally waking up. Brian, can I take some credit? When he was doing nothing, I know I said in the most sheepish voice, so I probably don't deserve any credit, but I was like, I still think that Nick Schmaltz will be good at one point just because he's playing with Patrick Kane, and obviously, maybe that was an obvious thing. But anyway, after going pointless for 5 games, Schmaltz is now on a 3-game point streak with 6 assists over that span, 3 of them on the power play. Interestingly, Schmaltz has not been centering the Patrick Kane line. They put Artem Anisimov back as the center. Schmaltz has been on the wing, and it's going pretty well. And also on the power play, it's been like the top power play has been Kane, Anisimov, Schmaltz, Brandon Saad, and Cody Franson, which I don't want to get into again. I know that led to an argument last week. I'm not saying like drop Duncan Keith for Cody Franson, but Cody Franson's looking like a guy, by the way, that you should be considering adding in free agency. Maybe over Justin Falk. I don't know. No, I wouldn't take him over Justin Falk. Anyway, Brian, is it time for people now to pounce on Nick Schmaltz before it's too late, or will he just slow down again? Chicago only plays 2 games next week, but then 5 the week after. So very tempting to grab him for the following week.
Very tempting, for sure. And if you can tolerate Nick Schmaltz on your roster this week, in which Chicago only plays twice, this is very important for everyone to know schedule-wise. Chicago only plays twice this upcoming week, and both those times are on nights where everybody's playing. So you'll likely be benching him because, well, your roster will be full of your better players. But if you can tolerate that, then 5 games from him the following week probably beats 3 games from most other free agents. So for that reason, you can go for him. What a weird power play in Chicago, by the way. You mentioned Franson, but how many of these guys, aside from Kane and Saad, would be on a first unit anywhere else in the league? Like Schmaltz, Anisimov, and Cody Franson? Okay, but that Chicago power play is finally going, oddly enough. They have 5 power play goals on 13 opportunities in their last 3 games played, and 4 of those came from that weird top unit, with Anisimov and Schmaltz cashing in nicely. Chicago, just for reference, 5 goals on their last 13 power plays. They had scored just twice on 33 power play opportunities over the 8 games prior to this run. It is a big relief to everyone, except those such as myself who are banking on Duncan Keith and Brett Seabrook being an important part of that power play.
Right. Well, hopefully things will change, but I guess they won't change anytime soon while it's rolling. So yeah, speaking of Anisimov, he's also on a 3-game point streak with 1 goal versus New Jersey. Then he had a hat trick versus the Rangers, then a goal yesterday versus Pittsburgh. Are we back to like 50-point Anisimov if he's back on the Patrick Kane line? Keep in mind, like Anisimov very quietly, he had 45 points in 64 games last year. That's a 58-point pace. So that was really valuable. I feel like we always talk about Anisimov when we're making comparisons with like players who are centering really good players. And we're like, oh, well, he's probably just an Anisimov. He's probably like only going to get like 45, 50 points, even though he's on this really good line. But Anisimov was like on a much higher pace than that last year. So what do you think about him as of now back on this line? Like if you were to compare him with Schmaltz, and I'll throw out another name later, but for now, like Anisimov versus Schmaltz, like who would you take?
I will take Anisimov, assuming that they're both playing with Kane. The weird thing about Anisimov is that over his last 84 games, he has maintained like exactly a 21% shooting percentage, which is wild. That means he's scored 32 goals on his last 153 shots. That's crazy. He's never been a big shooter, or this big a shooter before. He's actually always managed to be in the low and recently mid-teens, but this is a huge jump, and I'm not sure how much longer he can keep it up. Of course, this year is 10 goals on 48 shots, which of course I think is going to regress, but he's really beat back regression for like over a season now. So good for him. And I will take him just for a little more certainty. I feel like at least we know if he's playing with Patrick Kane, he's at least going to be a half-point per game guy with upside for more. We'd like to think the same of Schmaltz. We just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, so maybe it's the kind of thing where you're more confident in Anisimov having a decent floor. Schmaltz might have a higher ceiling that we just haven't seen yet, but for now it sounds like you would take the conservative bet on Anisimov. Then we have this other guy who I should mention. Like we mentioned actually Alex DeBrincat last week, saying we're really interested in him now. Saying that we were really interested in him now that he was back playing with Patrick Kane, but now he's not playing with Patrick Kane. He's on line 3 with Sharp and Hartman, but DeBrincat is on a 4-game point streak with 3 goals and 2 assists in his last 4 games. So does he become someone you're interested in just because he's doing well, even if he's not on a good line? Like, would you take DeBrincat over Anisimov right now?
No.
Okay, that's fair.
Would you?
I mean, I probably not. I don't know. Like DeBrincat, I'm always very shy about these 3rd line guys, but also if DeBrincat is doing well, maybe he could earn his way back into the top 6. Chicago's been swapping things around so often, but yeah, I guess for now, give me Schmaltz. I'll take Schmaltz over Anisimov, but like all 3 of them seem pretty similar. They could all go either way. Same with Cody Franson, right? Who's still getting decent power play time. Put up 2 assists versus the Rangers a couple games ago. So, you know, all these guys are guys who like could do well while they're playing with. It seems like we're just like so excited about people playing with Patrick Kane, but why not? He's great, and all these guys playing with him, we expect them to do stuff. Alex DeBrincat not playing with him, still doing stuff.
Yeah, that is the hope, right? If DeBrincat keeps producing, then he earns his way up into the top 6. But at the same time, you wonder, hey, if it's working so well on line 3 and everything else is going all right for Chicago, why would they mess with that either? It could go either way. I would prefer knowing that my guy is going to be getting top 6 minutes.
In the chat room, Alex is saying, remember Ryan Hartman? Yeah, I remember when I added him on a week and he played like on the Monday and Tuesday and did nothing. Then I dropped him and then my opponent picked him up and he got like 2 goals the next game. Drove me crazy. So I hate that guy. He's off of my list. No more mentions for Ryan Hartman on the cupful. No more mentions for Ryan Hartman on Keeping Karlsson, I guess, until he does something, and then we're forced to talk about him. Okay, Brian, before we move on to some hot streak goalies, and we have some really interesting ones, why don't we first take a break and give some props to our friends who are sponsoring this episode? Those are the people over at FanDuel. Man, sometimes you make these decisions, like you add a Hartman. Oh, I just said I wasn't going to mention it. But okay, one more time. You add him, then you're like, why did I add this guy? Why did I drop this other guy? What a huge mistake. With FanDuel, it doesn't matter because it's daily fantasy hockey. You get to set your lineup anew, fresh, every single time you play. And it's a ton of fun. There's new contests starting every day. You play whenever you want. Something for everyone. Lots of contests to choose from. Starting at just $1. You pick a contest. You choose your team. You watch your score real time. You have a good time. You try to win. I've been trying to win in our weekly Keeping Karlsson FanDuel League and failing miserably. Doing these ads for FanDuel are really exposing me as being not great at fantasy hockey. I want people to know I'm doing well, like in my season-long leagues. I'm near the top in all of them, but in FanDuel, man, it's hard. Like I thought I made such smart decisions, and like last week, Brian, I made such smart decisions for my cheap guys, and I think those should be the harder ones, right? Like I added Marco Scandella to my team. He had an assist. I had Justin Schultz. Like he was pretty cheap, but I got him. And then I just thought like all I need now is to pick some expensive guys since I saved so much money. Tyler Seguin, like nothing. 1.6 points versus Florida. Scheifele, nothing versus Arizona. Like Winnipeg versus Arizona. Anyway, I'll stop whining. The winner was Joker Wins. He had a killer lineup. He grabbed Connor McDavid for the Edmonton's 8-2 win. He also had Draisaitl for that game and Oscar Klefbom. I guess that's how you do it, right? You grab the people that you think their team is going to score a ton of goals, and he nailed it. Anyways, you could join us playing FanDuel every week. On Tuesday is when we have our weekly league. You just check out keepingkarlsson.com/FanDuel or fanduel.com/Karl, Karl. They'll both lead you to the same place. Sign up on Monday night to play in our league. And next week, you're going to lose if you do that because I'm going to win. I have a feeling.
Your audio just got super weird there. Like, I feel like you want to say /FanDuel again. Like you were saying, just check out keepingkarlsson.com and then start from /FanDuel.
Okay. Thanks for catching that.
Yeah.
Check out. Oh, man. Lost my train of thought. Okay. So if you want to play, check out keepingkarlsson.com/FanDuel or fanduel.com/Karl, Karl. They'll both lead you to the same place. You could sign up for our weekly league. And I got to warn you, though, you're not going to win if you sign up for this week because I have a really good feeling I'm going to take it this time.
Yeah, a lot of those good feelings have turned to bad. Meanwhile, I've done pretty well. But if you haven't joined us before and you want to take us both on, you'll also get free entry into the NHL Breakaway. If you're new users, that's a contest with thousands of dollars in cash prizes guaranteed to pay out when you make your first deposit on FanDuel. So just visit fanduel.com, sign up with promo code Karl, Karl, fanduel.com, promo code Karl, and remember that it is void where prohibited.
Of course, because you can't win money if what you're doing is prohibited. It makes sense. No, okay, I'll take that out. Let me just edit point there.
I didn't sell the void where prohibited line.
I need to come up with better things to say that aren't like, I feel like it would be bad if I'm saying in an ad for FanDuel that, yeah, you can't win money where it's prohibited. Like, then people might be thinking, well, why is it prohibited? Why would something be prohibited if it's being advertised on this podcast? But what do you know? Weird laws, right? A lot of dumb things are prohibited in the United States and in Canada. All right.
Tell us more.
Let's get into some goalies now. Brian, we've got to talk about Anton Khudobin. He's on fire. And no, I'm not joking around. Like, Anton Khudobin is doing really well. His 36 saves in a 3-1 win over San Jose yesterday brought him to a 5-0-2 record on the season. He hasn't lost in regulation, and he has a save percentage of .935. Yes, Anton Khudobin And maybe more importantly is that he got the start yesterday, even though he played on Thursday. So Boston wasn't just playing Khudobin to rest Rask. They chose to play Anton Khudobin, and it worked out for them. He pulled out another great win. So, like, at this point, Brian, we got to start talking about the Bruins and Tuukka Rask and Anton Khudobin. Like, what's going on here? Tuukka Rask has been so bad. He's lost 3 in a row. He has an .897 save percentage on the year. If you look at Rask's game log, he literally only has had 3 really good games. Like, I looked at it, like, I'm counting a really good game as over a .906 save percentage. That's not, you don't even have to be really good. That would even be good. But yeah, only 3 of his games have been above .906. It's terrible. So my obvious 2 questions to you are, first of all, if Anton Khudobin is available in free agency, do people need to pounce on him ASAP because he might be the new starting goalie of the Boston Bruins? And then secondly, if people are Tuukka Rask owners, is it safe to drop him? And like assuming you could get a somewhat okay goalie instead, like is Rask now in the same tier as guys like, I don't know, Leonard and Ranta, like Varlamov, these like lower tier guys, like the worst starters of the worst? Is Rask in that group now?
I'm going to just re-emphasize the harshness of Rask's seasons by restating what you said. Tuukka Rask has been a .906 goalie or less in every one of his appearances this year, save for 3 of them. That's very, very bad. Khudobin sure seems like a smart ad, and by saying that now, you and I are eating some crow here, as we were really uninterested in him when Rask went down with injury earlier this year, and I'm starting to wonder if that injury is still a nag for Tuukka Rask. He didn't miss a ton of time. He's come back. He's still been awful. I don't know if I'd go as far as dropping Tuukka Rask. Obviously, it depends on who the other free agent goalies are in your league. Like, if Rask could be the only starter type in free agency, then you should probably hang on. But Rask probably does end up in a similar tier as Lehner, Ranta, and Varlamov, though if he can work his way back up to league average save percentage, Boston, I think, has a better chance at picking up wins than any of the teams that those other guys play for. And I still think that Rask does have a shot at starting games and getting his save percentage back to league average. I don't see Khudobin as like a super serious threat yet. There's too much history with Rask and the Bruins for them to turf Rask after one push from the backup. And I also don't know that this is a push that Khudobin can sustain. It's going to be an interesting week or 2 in the Bruins crease, though. If you have Rask, you should probably cuff him with Khudobin just to be safe. And mostly because for the first time and maybe forever, you can't rest easy thinking that you're going to get guaranteed starts with Rask in your lineup. One more nightmare note that sort of contradicts my sort of optimism about Tuukka Rask is that his penalty kill save percentage is off the charts good, which is very bad news because that number is unsustainable and it's propping up what's already a bad number. So if that were average, .897 would look beautiful compared to what he really should have if that regresses back to normal without the rest of his game picking up, as I really hope it will. But again, with injury and age, we can't be 100% certain that it will be. It's time to think of a plan B or C if you're a Tuukka Rask owner.
Yeah, in one of my leagues, it's like a shallow league, 18 league. I think I've said this before. Like, Rask was dropped, and I was pretty shocked. I was like, oh, that's weird. What? This guy's dumb. But then I looked, and I didn't really want to add him out of free agency. I didn't have anyone I wanted to drop. Like, he stayed in free agency forever. Finally, someone added him, and I thought to myself, oh, I guess I missed my chance to get Rask. But, like, I feel like it was smart to drop him, and the guy who added him is probably regretting it now. He's pretty crap right now, but like you say, maybe he'll bounce back, or maybe these injuries are catching up to him. He gets injured almost every single season. Obviously, we're on Boston, and we have lots of other injuries to discuss, unfortunately. Brad Marchand has missed 3 games now with an undisclosed injury. He's on the IR. One of our patrons was asking about trying to trade for Marchand, and I was kind of like, go for it. Brian was like more apprehensive. I feel like it's hard when you have these undisclosed injuries. Like, who knows how serious it's going to be? Like, on one hand, Brad Marchand, he's like probably a for sure 75+ point guy when he's healthy. Though, of course, who knows? Maybe there'll be an announcement tomorrow that Marchand's getting shut down for months and months and months. Like, what do you think, Brian? What should people do at this point? I guess we can't really advise. It's literally an undisclosed injury. But would you be trying to trade for Marchand now? Or if you owned him, would you be trying to drop him to reduce the risk? Or would you say, like, roll the dice? He's too good. It's worth it.
My apprehension is, yeah, this is a weird injury that Marchand is involved with. He was hurt, he came back for a game, and then he was back to being hurt again. And that sort of pattern, we've seen it in the past. It's become a bit of a red flag, not thinking that something is going to be wrong for a long time. I'm not already like sure that something is going to be wrong in the long term for Marchand, but this weird pattern tells me that, well, either a player was back in the lineup too soon and potentially made the injury worse, or maybe the injury was misdiagnosed and we still aren't totally clear on what it is, and neither is the team. And that's why this is becoming a difficult situation. So yeah, that's why I'm reluctant to bet big on a guy who's in the middle of that. And I doubt you're getting such a big discount on Marchand, like on the injured version of Brad Marchand compared to the healthy one. So whether you should try and make a move for him or not depends entirely on the extent of the discount that you can swing for picking up an injured player and taking on that risk. If you can give a package that undercuts his normal scoring expectations, like of 75 points by about 10 points, if you can make a deal that sees you, that you would normally make for someone who's going to get 60 or 65 points, then I'm definitely good for that. But still even a little nervous. But still even a little nervous. I don't like trading for injured players.
Yeah, well, that's how you could sometimes make a killing, right? If you get it right. But yeah, Marchand is out. Bjork is out. On the plus side, David Krejci is back. So here's what the Bruins forward lines were looking like yesterday. Bergeron, Heinen, and Pasternak. And then Krejci, DeBrusk, and a guy named Peter Cehelarik. We tried to look at it. I don't think I did it that right. Peter, it looks like Celeric, but it's like Cehelarik. Anyway, okay. Bergeron, Celeric, and Krejci and Pasternak on the top power play. No points in 2 games for Krejci since his return. Also, no shots on goal, so just nothing for Krejci. He had 6 points in 6 games before getting injured, though, so I feel like that should make him have a bit of a longer leash if you have him. Like, what do you think, Brian? Hard to be optimistic about someone who had this injury and now has no points and no shots in 2 games, but maybe a good time to still add him if he's in free agency just because of what he was doing before and what he did last year.
Yeah, in some leagues, he still could be a good under-the-radar free agent pickup, especially if your team is really struggling. Like if your bottom spots are just streaming out nobodies who aren't helping you. Krejci's better than a bunch of nobodies. I think he still has some good runs in him, but keep your expectations still on the lower side of, say, 55 rather than hoping on the upside above it that we had gotten used to from him. I think 50 to 55, 55 being the upside, is about what you can expect.
Okay, and then so we've got Danton Heinen, who's on a 3-game point streak. We mentioned him last week that we were into him. Nice to see him produce with this opportunity being on the top line. But Brian, seems like we have a new guy to talk about, and that is Peter Cehelarik, who is on the top power play. And he scored his first ever NHL goal yesterday versus San Jose. So do you expect more of that to come for Peter while Marchand and Bjork are out? Like, who is this guy?
He's a 22-year-old picked at the end of the 3rd round back in 2013 and was expected going into the year to be an early call-up from Providence. And, well, here he is. He had 44 points in 55 AHL games since turning pro at the outset of last season. The sense I have is that he could be a middle 6 winger in the NHL if all goes well for him. But, like, look at Anders Bjork, who's got more upside and had 9 points in 16 games. I'd expect that to be about as much as I continue using the pronoun he because I don't even want to try and pronounce Peter Cehelarik. That's about as much as he can do based on what I've read about him. So keep your expectations real tempered.
Yeah, this is definitely someone that you're like potentially streaming in for a game or two. If the schedule says that it's worthwhile, get a couple games off of someone on the top power play. You never know if a power play point will come. But yeah, it sounds like you're saying if you weren't so excited about Bjork before he got injured, then you shouldn't be so excited about Cehelarik. Sadly, Torrey Krug is injured again, day-to-day with an upper body injury. Unsurprisingly, Charlie McAvoy has seen an increase in his ice time, and he has points in each of his last 2 games with Krug out. So McAvoy was pointless in 8 games before this Krug injury. If he was dropped in your league because he was on such a cold streak, I definitely jump on him while he's the top guy. I think there's no question.
Yeah, I had McAvoy down to be a snoozer this week, but Yeah, I had McAvoy down to be a snoozer this week. He had really done very little for the last couple of weeks, but of course, Krug's injury is a shot in the arm to his value. You want the de facto power play 1 quarterback, and so go ahead and grab him, see what he can do. For as long as Krug is out, Krug has been day-to-day for a while now with very little information in the updates we've been given. So just like Marchand, it could be short, could be long. Keep a close eye on it. In the meantime, McAvoy is someone to add.
Yeah, and if McAvoy could keep this run going with Krug out for like 3 or 4 games, and then if news comes out that Krug is going to be coming back soon, that's your time to try to sell McAvoy to someone who just looks at the numbers over the past few games and is like, oh man, this guy's amazing. Doesn't realize that Krug's going to take a spot soon. Anyways, Brian, we were on goalies. I know I remember. So let's cycle back to goalies. We talked about Khudobin. Let's give some credit to the ageless Roberto Luongo, who is on a really great run now. He's had 4 straight really strong starts, including a 2-0 shutout of San Jose on Thursday. He's up to a .927 save percentage on the year for Roberto Luongo, and he was kind of bad last year, so it's a huge bounce back for him. Right now, he's definitely worth running with, and Reimer is a total snoozer, right? Like, Reimer has been bad. Luongo has been great. No reason to, like, hold the handcuff or whatever. You could just drop Reimer outright, I would think. And, Brian, would you drop Tuukka Rask for Roberto Luongo if you had the option?
Well, first off, with Reimer, he really blew his opportunity. He didn't do anything, really, to give the Panthers a reason to look at him as a potential number 1 or 1A or even 1B in the window he had to show himself off while Luongo was out. So Luongo's back. He's doing well. He's the guy for now. I'm still doubtful that Luongo is this good. I'll go back to my most recent line on Luongo, which is that last year he barely managed to be near league average in save percentage, and I actually had him down as having overperformed thanks to a very high penalty kill save percentage. He's still doing a little too well on the PK, but he's performing at about average at even strength, which is honestly a win for him at this point. So yeah, entrenched as the number 1 in Florida at the moment, and I would prefer him to Tuukka Rask.
Wow, man, Tuukka Rask. You stink. But yeah, I agree. Like, I don't want Tuukka Rask. He was already bad last year. So come on, enough of him. This is another guy I'd rather have over Tuukka Rask. That's Jimmy Howard. He's doing a great job proving that last year's awesome numbers were not a fluke. He's had 5 really strong starts now. He's up to a .931 save percentage on the season. He has more wins than losses. Like, that's something nobody would have expected. We assumed Jimmy Howard's going to be on this team that's going to have a lot of trouble winning. But no, Detroit, I think Detroit's winning today, aren't they? Or no, they're 3-3 in overtime right now with Colorado. We'll see if Jimmy Howard can pull out another win. Actually, Brian, in our joint league, our opponent has Jimmy Howard. So I'm kind of hoping Colorado can pull this one out in overtime or in the shootout. Anyway, Brian, like, maybe the Red Wings knew what they were doing when they decided to protect Jimmy Howard and expose Mrazek to Vegas. Like, Howard has been great, and Mrazek has been not great, right? Everyone mocked at the time, but Mrazek has been super weak. He shut out Edmonton 4-0 a few weeks ago, but aside from that, he's been bad in almost every start he's had. So, Brian, anyway, at this point, are you finally a Howard believer? Would you drop Rask for him? And overall, like, what do you expect going forward for Jimmy Howard?
Are you not going to bring up that maybe Detroit was right to expose Peter Mrazek?
Oh my God, do you listen?
I
said
do.
that.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I guess I'm like reading my notes while you're speaking and I missed chunks. Okay.
I said, to recap, I said maybe maybe they were smart to keep Howard and expose Mrazek because Howard's been doing so well and Mrazek has been so shit.
Yeah. Okay. Come on, Elon. Vegas, who had to have Dansk, Subban, and Legacy step in because Marc-Andre Fleury's been injured. They couldn't have used Peter Mrazek, and Detroit was smart to leave him unprotected. That's ridiculous revisionism there. Mrazek has been an NHL goalie and could still be, but yes, I agree with you that in Detroit, he's in definite number 2 territory right now, with 1B starting to seem out of reach based on these recent unimpressive starts. However, I think if he was able to be in a starting role and play a bunch of games in a row, well, I feel like he at least would have as good a chance as Dansk, Subban, and Legacy to play well. But going back to Jimmy Howard, Howard, yeah, he is now, I'm ready to say he is actually looking like the player I thought he was 9 years ago, and then thought he definitely wasn't. And now I'm still not sure he is, but at least he's established that his high watermark goes pretty high. His number is very impressive. And it's funny, Elon, because he definitely fits the older and previously injured goalie mold that you've been referring to often when declaring that some guys, like Carey Price, for instance, not to reignite that debate, but that older goalies who have an injury history, they might just be done. And that's it with their careers. Howard is going to be 35. Howard is going to be 35. Whoa. Howard is going to be 34 years old by the time the season is over. He's seeing a bump from a very strong shorthanded save percentage. I don't know, though. Like, it sounds like I'm taking you to task, but I'm not sure I am, because he's been a .929 goalie in his last 41 games. I'm still not totally sold, but for the time being, I'm at least renting. How about that?
Okay, sounds good. But I like how you totally took me to task on something I didn't even say. Like I said that everyone was mocking Detroit for protecting Howard instead of Mrazek, and then you're telling me about how like Vegas, like I didn't say anything about Vegas. I said that people mocked Detroit. I think it sounds like Detroit made the smart decision.
I don't recall it being a decision between Howard or Mrazek.
Yeah. If I recall correctly, the way expansion worked is each team was only allowed to protect one goalie, and everyone thought they were going to protect Mrazek, but they protected Jimmy Howard.
I feel like before we go any further in this conversation, we need to double check that. I feel like they protected like Jared Carreau.
Let's check that. Let's go ahead and check.
It was so long ago now.
Because there's a reason why Pittsburgh couldn't protect Marc-Andre Fleury. And
well, I think you had a choice.
I'm pretty sure I'm right. But go ahead and check if you need to.
Oh, yeah. No, you're right. You're right. Good job.
What are you going to say?
Well, I forget where we left off now.
Well, I said that you took me to task on something that I didn't even say, and that I think that I said something about how Detroit was good, and then you said I don't think that Detroit had the option. So you could say now, like, oh, like, I guess, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess Detroit did make the right decision for the short term. I don't know. Like, I know I went on about, like, if, like, I think Detroit exposed Mrazek thinking that he shouldn't have been taken. This was my thinking, and that Vegas like would have no interest in him, and then Vegas fulfilled that by not taking him, even though I think they should have. It's a complicated thing, but I'm going to give you the win on this one.
Also, Brian, even though I didn't make that point, haven't the Vegas goalies been really good? And like, are you saying like, oh, because Vegas had like 5 goalie injuries, shouldn't they have like taken Mrazek? Like, I don't think they were expecting that. Like Malcolm Subban, we're gonna get to him soon. He's been good. Like, I guess Pickard, they swapped him some, in some convoluted way for Subban. Like Marc-Andre Fleury was good. Like, what would they have even done with Peter Mrazek, assuming their goalies would have been healthy? I feel like everyone was smart. Peter Mrazek has shown that he's not very good. That's all I meant to say.
Okay.
So since we're on Detroit, don't look now. Larkin and Mantha, and this is before today's game. I haven't even checked, but Larkin and Mantha going into today both had 19 points in 20 games. That's basically a point per game pace. Is it time to officially adjust our expectations for these guys? I feel like they're a big part of the reason why Jimmy Howard is winning all those games. Like he's playing well, but also Detroit is scoring some goals. I feel like we both considered Larkin and Mantha as like potential 50 to 55 point guys. Maybe that was even like a high expectation, especially for Larkin. Are you ready to call these guys 60 plus? I mean, you weren't ready to call Aho 60 plus. I imagine it's going to be hard for you to call Larkin or Mantha 60 plus.
It's going to be impossible for me to call them 60 plus. Mantha is shooting at 20%, which is helping Larkin contribute to an unusual number of points that are available while he's on the ice. I'm still thinking 50, maybe 55 points for both, but that's definitely a step up for at least Larkin, for whom we really weren't sure what to expect this season. So that said, I'm happy to have seen this version of Larkin show up again. Someone else in Detroit who's doing really well these days, Justin Abdelkader. I haven't checked in on the rest of the game, but he did score in the game that's going on as we're recording this, and that put him up to at least 2 goals and 5 assists for 7 points in his last 6 games, 12 shots in there, and 11 PIMs for anyone who still likes those.
Yeah, so some good players, like also Athanasiou who's been doing pretty well. So there's a lot of interesting guys there. But yeah, anyways, at the very least, we're like pick Mantha or Larkin up if they're available. I'm sure they're not. If anything, Brian's saying to sell high. Okay, we're still on goalies. Frederik Andersen seems to have finally shaken off his early season rust as he's put up 2 straight shutouts, 4 straight games with an above 943 save percentage. So he's just been so good. His save percentage is now only up to 914. That just shows how badly he was doing before that, but it's climbing up. He's just about at league average. I'm sure he'll pass it soon. We're expecting his save percentage to keep growing, right? It's not going to stay at 914. We thought going into the year he'd be around 918. I think that's where he was last year, 917, 918. Like, to me, Brian, I see Frederik Andersen as like a near top tier goalie in any league that counts saves. Like, he plays a ton of games. I feel like, even like Cam Talbot is known as the goalie that plays a ton. But I feel like the backup in Edmonton, Brossois, he's probably better than McElhinney. So I feel like Anderson in the end is going to play even more games. So there's going to be a ton of saves for Anderson. The Leafs score like a ton of goals. So I expect Anderson to be able to get wins. Like he even wins games when he plays poorly. Like the Leafs, even though Anderson was a below 900 goalie for a lot of the start of the year, Anderson was still getting wins. So I don't know. I really like Frederik Anderson in fantasy right now. He's doing great now. And I think he's in a great situation. I don't really even have a question for you. Just any comment about my thoughts on Frederik Anderson. I guess since we're on the Leafs, you sent me a link to an article on The Athletic earlier today. You have this thing where you just send me articles, then you like give me homework and I have to read it. So you want to maybe tell us about that?
Sure. Well, first off, on Anderson, the point you're making is absolutely true. It's great to be playing for the team that gives one of the highest numbers of run support in the NHL. So good spot for any goalie to be. You're also right about McElhinney being a really low-end backup who's not going to really ever push at all and should never be trusted to tend the net too often through the year, especially if Toronto does find themselves in some kind of positioning battle moving into the playoffs. And yeah, what I wanted to comment on was to note that Mitch Marner was playing with Matthews recently, and the article was just about how they enjoy each other's company both on and off the ice. And all it just had me thinking was that if Marner is somehow still a free agent in your league after being dropped from his early season struggles, this would absolutely be an interesting time to stream him in, though we already said as much last week. You might be too late to do it.
Okay, yeah, definitely a nice situation in Toronto. Like everyone's doing well. Happy times. They destroyed the Habs. We're not going to talk about the Habs this week. We talk about them a lot. I think there was one news about them. What's his name? Some guy is injured right now. I'm totally blanking. Brian, who's the Hab who's injured?
Weber?
No. Lehkonen.
Are you sure Weber's healthy?
I'm positive. Yeah. No, you're thinking how Weber and Drouin like both had the flu or something like that. They're fine.
No, Weber had a lower body.
Oh, okay. I think he's fine.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Let me just say Lehkonen, that's it. He's out. So, I don't know. Take a look at the Habs lines. I don't want to talk about them. By the way, Brian, Detroit lost just like I wanted. And Erik Johnson had 2 points today. I've been touting Erik Johnson for a while, saying how he was not getting points, even though he's on the ice for a lot of goals. Now he's finally getting some luck. All right, where are we here? So, The Athletic, the Leafs. Okay, I want to talk about Calgary now. Brian, we totally nailed Furland last show. He's been great. He was great going into the last episode, and he's been great all this week. 4 points in 3 games, sticking with Gaudreau and Monahan on the top line and the top power play. I feel like if you picked up Furland, you've got to stick with him for next week if you have him, right? And if he's somehow still in free agency, you have to jump on him right now?
Yeah, for sure. I don't think that like this is his new production pace that you can continue expecting, but you cannot overlook him while he is flaming this hard and playing with such good line mates.
Flaming. I like it because they have the flames.
Yeah, that was a high-end pun right there.
I'm sure that's going to be the episode title now. Or no, it's probably going to be some reference to a band that no one's heard of. Where are you leaning? Which one?
Haven't decided yet.
Okay, well, that's always the fun. When you download the episode, you'll know what the title is. And just remember, Brian comes up with the titles.
That's Elon's way of saying that you hate them and don't blame him.
There was a good one a few weeks ago because I picked it. The Times They Are Do Changing. You wanted to make it some reference to something no one had heard of, and I changed it. And I thought it was pretty good.
No, mine was going to be Duchesne in a Sense Trade, which was a stretch, but sounds like Insane in the Membrane.
Yeah, it doesn't really. Okay, that was fun. On Calgary, that how Mike Smith missed a game with an injury and then Eddie Lack came in and was a total disaster. And Brian, you like messaged me saying, oh man, I lost my fab bid for Eddie Lack. My opponent ended up getting him. That's so annoying. And then I was just telling you, like, don't worry, Lack sucks. And Lack, he was a disaster. So I'm just going to say this. Let me know if you disagree. If Smith gets injured again, and let's be real here. It's Mike Smith. He's going to get injured at some point during the season. Don't rush to add Eddie Lack. Add the next guy. Add John Gillies, right?
That's where you're ending. I guess so. If you think that John Gillies is going to start ahead of Eddie Lack, which I'm not sure is going to be the case. There was a lot of positive talk when Smith went down and Eddie Lack, this is his time. He's made some really positive progress in practice. The coach said he liked how he'd been working out lately. And then, of course, that happened. So you have to think that John Gillies might be the next best fantasy option if you're looking for a relevant numbered start in terms of save percentage. However, I don't know that he's going to start ahead of Eddie Lack.
Yeah, he
Did you
won't
hear
start ahead of Eddie Lack for the first game. And then Eddie Lack will let in like 6 goals on 18 shots, get pulled, and then that'll be the end. I'm telling you, that's what's gonna happen. Guaranteed. It's like when Niemi, when they brought Niemi in. I'm so sure about this. Eddie Lack stinks. Trust me.
You're crushing me. I have to say, I'm coming out wrong on everything this episode. It's a clear win for you. Good job.
Well, you didn't call Eddie Lack on the show.
No, that's true, but I have liked Eddie Lack for a while, and I'm still saying that he's going to start. But you're right. I feel like that is a pretty logical thought, is that if Mike Smith does get injured again, Eddie Lack plays, he stinks. John Gillies plays, maybe doesn't stink so bad.
Yeah, okay. And I guess also on Calgary, TJ Brody, he's up to 14 points in 19 games. I feel like we should probably start giving him some more respect. I feel like we're always mocking, like Dave, one of our patrons, has his stream scheme show, and he is always like saying, like, put your best players on the power play. And he's like, why do the Flames have TJ Brody on the top power play? We always say, like, why don't the Flames put like Hamilton on the top power play or Giordano? It's so weird how they have Brody there. Meanwhile, Brody's like putting up points. He's got a 60-point pace right now. If you have TJ Brody, are you trying to sell high? Or are we starting to be convinced that he's decent and he's there and he's doing well there and he's probably going to stay there and he's probably worth owning in fantasy?
Okay, yeah, so here's the thing about TJ Brody. He's on a pretty good power play unit. That helps. And he's managed to pick up a point on 8 of Calgary's 14 power play goals this year, which is impressive, but that's far too high a number of goals for him to be getting in on. Last year, he had a point on 12 of his team's 52 power play goals. And by the way, I'm not talking on ice here. I'm talking total power play goals scored for the team. That's a massive difference. That's like going from 65-70%. That's like going from 65. That's like going from getting a point on 65 or 70% of all your team's power play goals, from when last year you were getting only like 20%, 1 in 5. So that's a huge reason that TJ Brody is out to the numbers he's got so far, because of those 8 power play points moving quickly. At even strength, not so good in his numbers. He's in a 5-way tie for 9th on his team in scoring with just 3 points, and he's tied for 14th in primary points with just a single one of them. 5 of Brody's 8 power play points have been secondary assists, although that does kind of make a little more sense on the power play, where you have the D more involved in creating, and it could be a 2-step process starting with a shot from the point or a pass to one of the flanks. But Brody still has the worst primary to secondary ratio of any Flame on the top power play unit. So you said give him more respect, and then I went into all this about maybe we shouldn't. I think you could try selling high on him. I think this is a good question to try and decide if you'd want TJ Brody or Justin Falk. This seems like an obvious one for me. I would take This seems like a situation where I would be really tempted to say take TJ Brody.
Oh, I was sure you'd say take Justin Falk. Yeah, I mean, Brody's the one producing. I guess it depends on your categories, right? Falk's going to help you more in shots and hits. But if we're looking at straight, like, points-only league, then I think I would probably go Brody. All right, Brian. Oh, by the way, I mentioned the Scream scheme, and no one knows what it is. Like, this is a podcast, like I said, one of our patrons make. Actually, we are sharing the episodes on our patron feed. If you are a patron of the podcast, you get access to all of our bonus episodes. You could also get access to the stream scheme. Otherwise, you could search for it on SoundCloud. That's where Dave is publishing it, aside from on our patron feed. All right, Brian. So we mentioned at the end of the last episode that Sam Reinhart got promoted to the Eichel line in Buffalo at the expense of Jason Pominville. I think you were just reading through some snoozers at the end. You mentioned Pominville, and that was like sort of the byproduct of that, as Sam Reinhart's back in the top 6. Things have already been shaken up again. Okposo actually ended up getting bumped out of the top 6 for Pominville, who is now with O'Reilly and Benoit Pouliot. But, of course, things could always get shaken up again since the Sabres lost yesterday. But, yeah, Sam Reinhart, he put up a goal and 2 assists versus Pittsburgh on Tuesday, was looking really good. I was feeling like, okay, he's back on the top line. He's clearly doing well now. But then he went and did nothing Friday and Saturday. Of course, Buffalo only scored 2 goals overall in those games, so you wouldn't have expected too much from Reinhart. Still, okay, so, Brian, would you stream Reinhart just because he's on the Eichel line if he stays there? Or would you be the type of person to wait and see him do more before jumping to add him?
No, I streamed Jason Pominville while he was in that spot, so I would do the same for Reinhart.
Okay, yeah, though I feel like when you streamed Pominville, it was after he was getting some points, right? You didn't just grab him right away. But I guess, yeah, Reinhart did have that one good game. Okposo on line 3 kind of stinks, but he's still on the top power play. He had a 4-game point streak before yesterday. I assume, Brian, you have him in the cupful. Seems like you're planning on still holding him for a while.
Yeah, Okposo's deployment improved, and so did his scoring, which I thought was sort of predictable. Okposo has to be too good to play on the third line for long. I know the Buffalo coaching staff had said moving Pominville to the third line was not a critique of his play, that it was just to see if he could take what he was doing on the top line and bring it to the third line and contribute to team scoring. So it might be the same situation with Okposo. Hey, he had a good run. Let's see if he can get that third line going. Although maybe the Buffalo coaches should accept that they might not be deep enough to have a top nine, though, and they're just sinking the production hopes of anyone they put down there.
Yeah, I think that's a more reasonable thing. So we'll see. I guess you would have Benoit Pouliot out of the top 6, right? And you'd put Okposo there, and that's how you'd leave it.
Yeah, or Sam Reinhart.
Well, no, like Reinhardt's already there right now.
Out of the top 6. You're telling me I could bump one guy out of the top 6?
Oh, you're saying or Sam Reinhart?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Did I answer that correctly or no?
No, I guess you did. I just assumed that Reinhart should stay there. Did I put a error point there? I don't know what I'm doing here. This is gonna be hard to edit. Okay, fair enough. Nothing new to report on Evander Kane, but we should probably check in on him. We talked about him after his really awesome start to the year, and he's still keeping it up. Like, he's up to 19 points in 20 games. He's now on the top power play. He wasn't even on the top power play at the start of the season, but he's gotten there. I guess he bumped Sam Reinhart. Kane is also third in the league for shots on goal with 93 shots. So fingers crossed he stays healthy and keeps this up. Where do you expect Evander Kane to land points-wise if he could actually play the whole season?
He sure looks destined to surpass 60 points. Maybe Evander Kane can get to 65. He does lead the league with 3 shorthanded goals, which is impressive, but you got to account for that when you're trying to figure out his full season pace. You can't count on that production to keep coming for him to get 3 shorthanded goals for every 20 games he plays, unless, of course, you think Brian Gibbons and Derek Dorsett, who have 2 each, will continue their runs as well. Probably not.
Right. Okay. So it's interesting. Like, we've mentioned some other players who are near point per game, and you're like, for sure they're going to fall. You look at them as like 50-point guys. I guess Evander Kane, you like him to beat 60 because of all of these shots, and I guess the really good deployment.
Huge shot counts, great deployment.
Yeah. Okay. And then we've got Scandella still on power play 1. Ristolainen still injured. We don't know for how long. Only 1 assist in the last 7 games for Scandella. I still think I'd stream him just because he's on that top power play. How about you?
It's hard not to want any guy quarterbacking his team's top power play in it, just like we said about Charlie McAvoy, but Scandella has managed nearly nothing with the opportunity he's had, and he doesn't offer much in the way of peripherals either. So it depends on what your waiver wire looks for defenseman. If he is probably some kind of upgrade on So it probably depends on what your waiver wire looks like for defensemen. If you're super desperate on defense and you have nothing to lose by adding him, if you have like Will Butcher or something and you're hoping for an improvement, probably not. Of all the power play quarterbacks in the league, Scandella is probably the least desirable one.
Wow. I don't know. I think he'll do something this week. I'm going to give him my Nick Schmaltz seal of approval that I see points coming soon in this situation.
Your Nick Schmaltz seal approval. Well, your Nick Schmaltz seal of approval means we're only 3 weeks away from seeing meaningful production from Scandella.
Right, and by then, Ristolainen will be back, and I'll take it away. Okay, Brian, we got to go to Vegas, update our Vegas power rankings. Like, they keep scoring so many goals. Tonight, it's 3-0 for Vegas over LA after the first period. William Karlsson has 2 goals, both assisted by Riley Smith. Brian, the hot name right now is William Karlsson. Man, he's the Karlsson. Like, we talk about Erik Karlsson. William Karlsson not too far behind right now in points for the season. Of course, William has played more games. Anyways, doesn't matter. We don't need to compare the Karlssons. But, like, William, he had 14 points in 18 games going into today. Now 2 goals today, 5 points in his last 5 games before today. Then you have Eric Haula, 5 points in his last 5. Perron, 7 in his last 5. Neal with 4. Riley Smith with 4. Like, everyone's producing recently, and everyone's producing like over the haul of the season. Like, on the season, David Perron leads the way with 17 points in 18 games. Again, this is before today's game. Then you got Neal, Karlsson, Smith, Marchessault, Haula, like all putting up good points this season. Here were the lines last game, if that helps. Because in the end, Brian, I'm asking you to rank these Vegas guys. I guess also just separately, you could say, like, is William Karlsson the real deal? Is he the one you'd want the most? So I guess that'll come out in your power rankings. Okay, the lines last game. Karlsson, Marchessault, Riley Smith, and then Haula, Neal, and Perron. And then the top power play has been Marchessault, Haula, Neal, Perron, and Nate Schmidt. So is there anyone here standing out to you? Are they all the same? Seems like we've been letting people down so far, saying that nobody is worth owning aside from James Neal and like you were like maybe Marchessault at this point. Are some of these guys worth owning? Like, do you need to jump on these guys if they're somehow still available?
It's very kind of you to say we've been letting people down when it's definitely been me who's been the one who said, like, I remember, how can I forget that I said it would be tough for any Golden Knight to break the 50-point mark this season. And now we're looking at 6 Golden Knights who are currently on pace for more than 60 points. Look, the team shooting percentage is still pretty darn high, below only Toronto's at even strength and below only Tampa's on the power play. And if you think they have the personnel to keep up with those two teams in that respect, I've got a beach house I can sell you in Idaho. I still don't like these guys a ton, but I'll once again acknowledge that they may be cool enough to kick it on your roster until that regression kicks in. If you want to try and hang on to some of them, I'd go Marchessault, Karlsson, Neal, Smith, Haula, Perron. How about that? That was off the top of my head.
That was crazy. Perron is leading the team, and Karlsson's the one who's like the hottest right now. And Marchessault, whatever. I guess that it just goes to show that who knows. Obviously, I'm just telling you what happened in the past. You're trying to project the future, but you're saying that was off the top of your head. Hard to not want Perron and Karlsson right now. They're both basically at a point per game. But fine.
Not so hard for me. Actually, kind of hard. I have to say, like, the production has been really, really incredible. And I feel, I don't feel foolish for not calling it. I still think everything will regress, but it's really been an incredible run that you might as well get in on for as long as it lasts.
Yeah, but you don't have anything about any specific player that you think it's more likely to last for? You feel like they're all just kind of the same?
Yeah, same as before. Marchessault and Neal seem like the guys, when everything does regress, who will be most capable of sustaining meaningful production.
Okay, I'm going to ask you for next week to look into William Karlsson. I actually want to know more about this guy in particular because he's doing really, really well and has been hot for a long time now. And his last name is Karlsson. So I'd like to get a deeper dive into him. Maybe he's better than we're giving him credit for, or maybe not. Okay, since we're on Vegas, Malcolm Subban should be back. Apparently he's healthy enough for today, but they still decided to play Lagacé. But I'd assume Malcolm Subban is going to be the starting goalie moving forward. Or maybe they'll go 50-50. Like, Vegas keeps winning, so it's hard to know what they're going to do. Subban has been good. He's only played 3 games so far, 936 save percentage. I feel like he's probably worth jumping on while we wait for Marc-Andre Fleury to return. Assuming that Subban becomes the undisputed starter, are you taking him over Tuukka Rask?
No, I'm not. It's impossible to say if Malcolm Subban is better than Tuukka Rask. He couldn't get a sniff of that starting position while he was in Boston behind Tuukka Rask. So if that's any indication, then he's probably not a better option. But he is still just about a month shy of turning 24, so it's possible that he can be an NHL starter. I was going to say this could be our first chance to really find out, and then Maxime Lagacé got the start, and it looks like early returns are 3-0 for Vegas, so he might pick up the win. I don't know when we'll get a longer look at Subban. I would still prefer Tuukka Rask.
Okay, Brian, question for you. I've been seeing Ryan Nugent-Hopkins as a free agent streamer over the past couple of years. Like, he seems like a guy who most people are just like, you pick him up every once in a while, then you drop him on Edmonton, of course. Should I upgrade him at this point to someone who should be rostered in most leagues? Like, slowly but surely, Nugent-Hopkins has 15 points in 20 games on the season. That's a 61.5 point pace. Seems like R&H is the core of the second line on Edmonton. They shift around everyone else, but Nugent-Hopkins stays there. Currently, he's playing with Lucic and Draisaitl, so getting Draisaitl there obviously really helps him. Of course, the downside is there's never any power play one time for Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. They put guys like, what's his name? Sorry.
Letestu?
Yeah, that was it. They put guys like Mark Letestu up there. I guess they like to have a good second power play unit. But anyway, it's looking good for Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Last year, he only had 43 points. Are we expecting him to beat that this year? Looks like he's on pace for, he's probably going to break 50.
Yeah, I think he's really got a good shot at that. Looking at why this is happening, I'd say that Draisaitl is a big upgrade in line mates for him, but he did play the majority of his minutes over the last 3 years with Taylor Hall, Jordan Eberle, and, well, Milan Lucic. Draisaitl is still a nice guy to be playing with for Nugent-Hopkins, though, especially after Eberle's struggles all of last year. But looking just how much he's going to score, it's not going to keep pace as it is now. His shooting percentage is nearly double what it should be. His IPP is a fair chunk higher than it should be as well. And Nugent Hopkins' shot rate is actually down. So I'd bump him down from, he's currently at a 62-point pace. I think he's still going to break 50, which, by the way, no one realizes he's been able to do that or be on pace to break 50 points in 4 of his 6 seasons in the league. So I think he's on track to do that, and 55 points could be in sight.
Exciting. By the way, with Draisaitl on line 2, Drake Kajula got on line 1 yesterday, and he scored 2 goals in the 6-3 loss to Dallas. Would you be streaming him in? Drake Kajula I'm talking about. Like, obviously, all throughout the year, we've been talking about Puljujarvi, Yamamoto. Now we've got Kajula on line 1. Are you jumping on him playing with McDavid?
Yeah, you get the guy who's playing on McDavid's line. Obvious. Easy logic. Get who's playing with Crosby, get who's playing with McDavid, get who's playing with Matthews. No problem.
Okay, so let's say if I could choose right now, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins or Kajula, like who do I add between these two?
Short-term Kajula, but who knows how long he's going to be on that top line. So that's why I would probably, long-term I'd go Nugent-Hopkins. It depends what you're looking for.
Well, I don't know, for like a couple games. I think I would still go Nugent-Hopkins. Like, I just can't find it like Drake Kajula. Come on, what's he gonna do?
I agree. I lean towards Nugent-Hopkins too.
Okay, by the way, Edmonton, they made a trade. 2 unrestricted free agent signings from last summer got swapped. Edmonton and LA. Edmonton sent UC Jokinen to LA for Michael Camilleri. So let's take a look at if these guys are worth considering now that they're on new teams. Camilleri had no points and 4 shots in his first 2 games with the Oilers. He's been playing on the 3rd line with Puljujarvi and Strome, and I feel like they should call this the disappointment line. Camilleri, Puljujarvi, and Strome, all players who we had high hopes for going into the year. Maybe not as much Camilleri, but we thought maybe, top line with Kopitar, something could happen. Obviously, that didn't work out. Ryan Strome, everyone's like, top line with McDavid. That clearly didn't work out. Puljujarvi, we're still waiting. He got on that top line for a little bit, already bumped. I don't know. Do you think that's going to catch on, Brian, the disappointment line over line 3 on Edmonton?
I don't think so. We didn't have hopes for Strome either going into the year. We were definitely a little concerned that if he did not end up on McDavid's line, and even if he did, that he wouldn't be able to cash in. As for Jokinen, oh no, sorry. That's all.
Okay.
Well, because you didn't ask me about Jokinen yet.
Okay, then meanwhile, we've got UC Jokinen going to LA, and he has 2 assists in 2 games. Much better than Camilleri and his start in Edmonton. So it looks like Jokinen was on line 4 with Nick Dowd and Johnny Brodzinski yesterday, but he was on the top power play and got a power play assist on Thursday versus Boston with Kopitar, Brown, Muzzin, and Doughty. LA didn't have any power plays yesterday versus Florida, so that's why there was nothing there. LA is playing today. I can't report on that yet. Looks like Jokinen may have some value right now, though, if he's going to be on that top power play, right?
It makes sense that he gets to turn on that top power play. And yeah, that gives him some value the same way it gives Craig Smith and the Peter C over on Boston some value. He's in the spot that had mostly belonged to Alex Iafallo and Mike Camilleri before the trade happened. So sure, like there really aren't a lot of better options. And I think LA made a pretty good trade. Jokinen's going to be more useful, at least in controlling the pace of play, than Camilleri showed himself able to do with the Kings.
So you're saying that Edmonton made a not so smart trade?
Can you believe it?
I know. And so speaking of LA, looks like Tyler Toffoli. Speaking of, like, they do have good options for the top power play. Why not Tyler Toffoli? He was bumped to line 3 yesterday with Nick Shore and Andy Andra off. Trevor Lewis took Toffoli's place on line 2, but Toffoli doesn't care. He responded with 1 goal and 1 assist and 6 shots on goal. He had a really great game, but he only saw 12 minutes and 58 seconds of ice time. So it's like weird right now to own Tyler Toffoli. Like, should you be happy with him? He's got 50 points in 20 games, which doesn't seem droppable. But if you're on line 3 and power play 2, that's generally not someone I like to have on my team. What does a Toffoli owner do right now? Do we drop him for someone like, I don't know, Nick Foligno in fantasy? We'll actually get to Foligno next. So maybe we could hold off on that question. But what do you do as a Toffoli owner?
You just hope that Jeff Carter comes back in the 2 to 4 weeks that was projected initially when he was injured, and that should help Toffoli get his own value back up there. It is really weird. Toffoli has not seen this low ice time for any length of time over the last couple of years, which is why we expect that it'll bounce back. Maybe he's working on something. Maybe he's doing things the coach doesn't like. But look, if LA is playing UC Jokinen on their top power play unit, they're certainly starved for players like Toffoli who can get the puck on net and score goals as well. Ugh. who can get the puck on net and create scoring opportunities. And that's why I really think that you should not panic about this, but wait a week, keep an eye on his ice time. I think it should be fine. And especially if you can hang on, it sucks while Carter's out, but if you can make it until Jeff Carter returns, I think everything will be a-okay from that point on.
Right. Sometimes you have to think long-term. Fantasy playoffs are a long time away, and you'll be sad if you drop Tyler Toffoli. Then he and Carter are clicking come fantasy playoff time. But anyways, Brian, I mentioned Nick Foligno. He was actually dropped in our joint league, and I could see why. He only has 8 points in 20 games on the season, and he's pointless in 11 after a super hot start. I'm pretty sure there was a Dauber Ramblings article that totally called this, like during his hot streak, saying, sell high on Foligno now, it's not going to last. So whoever wrote that nailed it 100%. Looks like Columbus shuffled up their lines in practice today. Like once again, Foligno now on line 3 with Bjorkstrand and Mott. So that's not a good situation for him. The top 2 lines were looking like Jenner, Dubinsky, and Atkinson, and Panarin with Dubois and Josh Anderson. Wenberg, by the way, is still injured, but is skating. So probably another shakeup is coming soon when Wenberg comes back. But yeah, what's wrong with Nick Foligno? Do you think that he can get back to at least a 50-point pace moving forward? He seemed like a pretty solid bet for 50 points. That's what he's been doing the past few years. And like all those hits that he gives you makes him super valuable in a Bangers and Mash League if he could just pop in a point every couple games, which he's usually good for, but this year not so much, or at least not in the last few weeks.
Well, Nick Foligno wasn't going to score every... Oh, I did it. I did the Foligno thing. That makes people angry.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well.
Okay. Well, Nick Foligno wasn't going to score 8 points for every 9 games that he played, and he's not going to stay pointless in every 11 games he played either. He's up there with Aho, actually, is probably being the streakiest fantasy relevant guy so far this year. I don't know that anything is really wrong with him. I do know that those lines in Columbus are super weird. They seem like they're trying to get a top 9 going, but like Buffalo might be stretching themselves a little too thin to get meaningful production while doing it. Foligno isn't without blame, though. His rate stats are in decline for, well, another year, for the 3rd straight year now, which is concerning, but he's got to be at least a half point per game player going forward, which is probably underselling him. Like, that's the floor. So if that plus hits works for you, then stick with Foligno, and you can probably hope for more than 50 still.
Yeah, maybe not overall. Well, I guess he's kind of like, he had that hot start as a head start for that. But yeah, moving forward, I'd like to see even just a point every 2 games and then give me all those hits and I'm good. If he's going to do worse than that, then you're starting to get concerned. Brian, okay, let's roll through a bunch of outjuries now from the past week. I'm just going to tell you a bunch of them. None of them seem especially interesting to me, which is why I didn't start the show with them. But maybe I'll run through them all and then you could let me know which of these players, if any, you're interested in, or you could chime in about any of them. So let's start in Ottawa. Bobby Ryan is back for the Sens. He was playing on line 2 with Dzingel and Duchesne, though it looks like today Tom Pyatt's getting on that line with Bobby Ryan and Duchesne, so we'll have to see how that works out. Poor Hoffman, by the way, looking like he's going to be on the 3rd line with Burrows and Peugeot. Anyways, Bobby Ryan, no points in 2 games so far. He had 4 shots yesterday for what it's worth, so I'd be curious to know if you think there's anything worthwhile in adding Bobby Ryan, like playing with Duchesne. Could be pretty good. Then we have Travis Zajac, who returned to the Devils. He was on line 2 with Drew Stafford and Jesper Bratt. Henrique is now on line 3, so I think he's a snoozer if you're still holding on to him. 2 games so far for Zajac. No power play time, no shots. In the first game, 3 shots. Oh, sorry. Damn. No points. Two games back so far for 2 games back so far for Zajac. No power play time, no points, only 3 shots. I assume you wouldn't be adding him right now until he does something. Then in Winnipeg, Matthew Perreault returned to the Jets. He was on, like, I guess the 3rd or 4th line, I don't even know, with Matt Hendricks and Joel Armia. Second power play, he actually had a power play goal in his return versus Philly. He had a goal and an assist yesterday in the big win over New Jersey. He's getting low ice time, like only 10 minutes and 45 seconds and 11 minutes and 11 seconds in those 2 games. Curious to know if you're biting on him. I got 2 more for you. Okay, Nolan Patrick, back for the Flyers, looks to be on line 2 with Simmons and Dale Weiss. He is also on the second power play. He had nothing versus Winnipeg on Thursday, but he scored a goal and had 4 shots yesterday versus Calgary, so he's kind of interesting. And finally, Matt Niskanen returned for Washington. 1 assist in 3 games since his return, 12 shots in those games, though, which is really nice, especially for a defenseman on the second power play. Of course, he's not bumping John Karlsson. Curious to know if you would add Matt Niskanen if he fell to free agency for you in the couple. He did have 39 points last year, though that did include some top power play time, which he's probably not going to get. So, Brian, big list for you. I'll just run through it again. Bobby Ryan, Travis Zajac, Matthew Perreault, Nolan Patrick, Matt Niskanen. who interests you out of that group, if any?
All right, this will be a very functional rundown. Bobby Ryan, put him on your watch list. Travis Zajac, put him on your watch list. Mathieu Perreault, definitely tempting to add just as someone who is succeeding with poor deployment and maybe could do better, although since he's returned, Kyle Connor has been doing just fine in the top 6, so it doesn't look like that spot is up for grabs, or at least Kyle Connor's spot is up for grabs. I wonder if Brian Little's spot eventually becomes up for grabs. Nolan Patrick, you can forget about him for now. Matt Niskanen does interest me a little bit because of those shots. If only he blocked a little more often. He really only gets just over a block per game. He gets a couple hits if your league counts those. He could be like a Matthias Ekholm. He could be like a Matthias Ekholm He could be like a Matthias Ekholm type, though, with what he offers, which is close to 35 points, more if he does get to take a turn on the top power play. But we did just laud John Karlsson's efforts on that top power play recently, so there's no need for him to step in there for now.
Okay, and let's end the show, Brian. I've got a snoozer for you, and then I've got a new bangers and mash defenseman that people might want to consider. So first, the snoozer. Tim Heed on San Jose. Looks like he was off the top power play yesterday, and he's pointless in 6 games. So assuming he stays off the top power play in San Jose, we say bye to Tim Heed, right? I guess you should watch list him, see if he gets back on the top power play unit and starts converting again. But right now, it looks like Tomas Hertl is there in that 5th spot, and in that case, I don't really want Tim Heed.
His ice time has still been pretty friendly, seeing 19.5 minutes per game, which has probably helped him pick up the peripherals he's managed, which are 17 shots on goal and 11 blocks, which is not shabby at all for someone who's playing, which is not shabby at all for a 6-game stretch. However, it is shabby that he has no points. If those peripherals aren't helping you at all, then you can probably let him go. If the peripherals are helping you, maybe it's a reason, depending on who is out there in free agency, to hold on to him a little bit longer. And then Steven Santini.
I didn't mention him yet.
Okay, sorry.
You say it, hold a little bit longer?
Hold a little bit longer.
Well, I don't think that's how you were saying it. Can you say the whole sentence?
I don't remember the whole sentence.
Then maybe he's someone that I would hold.
Okay. Maybe he's someone I'd hold a little bit longer.
Okay, and I guess Dave here in the chat room is saying that Gudas was suspended for 10 games, so you could drop him. Yeah, for sure. I mean, you don't need us to tell you that if you have a player who's suspended for 10 games, he's probably not going to be too good for you over those 10 games. But hey, watch list Gudas if he gets dropped in your league, because he's obviously great for peripherals. Or at least he at one point was. I'd expect he will again. But speaking of someone who's good at peripherals, how about someone right now? Steven Santini on New Jersey? I'm sure I have to say on New Jersey because no one knows who he is. But since November 1st, he's put up 34 hits in 8 games. That's crazy. That's more than 3 hits a game. Also had a 10-block game last Sunday at Chicago. So, Brian, who is Steven Santini? And should people be rushing to grab him in their bangers leagues if hits and blocks are counting?
If your league enjoys, say, Mark Borowiecki, or last year's version at least of Mark Borowiecki, where he could win you hits single-handedly, then yeah, you might want to take a flyer on Steven Santini. Just expect nothing else. In 56 career NHL games, he has just 11 points. In the AHL, not much better. Last year, he played 20 games in Albany, had just 2 assists.
Yeah, I guess the only tricky thing with these types of players who you're adding for their peripherals is he could get benched, right? Like you could add him for a stream and then it'll turn out right before game time that he's going to be a healthy scratch. So you got to watch out with your Steven Santini ad, but you could potentially get 10 blocks and 5 hits in a game if you play him correctly. Brian, that's all I've got for this week. Another huge list of players just like that. Done. Hopefully some of our predictions come out correctly. I'm really especially interested to see if you get guys like Aho right. At the end of the day, if he's only a 50-55 point guy. Are you confident in that one? Or are you prediction, but you're not more than 30-40%?
Well, just to be clear, I didn't say 50-55 for Aho. I said 55-60. Teravainen was 50-55 and Stahl was 50.
Okay, fair. Okay, I don't even know why I asked that. All right, let's end the show. Before we do, let's thank you people, the listeners, for listening to the show. We really appreciate it. We're coming out with new content every week, and the only reason we do it is because we have you listening to us. Thanks to everyone who joined us in the chat room, of course. Thanks to all of our Twitter followers. If you want to become one of them, follow us at Keeping Karlsson. We try to give fantasy advice on Twitter, try to come up with funny tweets. I had a tweet that I thought was really funny a couple days ago that no one liked it. Then I even asked someone, like, did you think my tweet was funny? And he was like, I didn't get it. So I guess maybe it wasn't. What was it about again? Do you remember, Brian?
It was about something to do with catering.
Oh yeah, there was like some story about how some rookie is like really enjoying getting catering, and I was saying we should get catering. I don't know. In my head, it was funny. I was out like at a bar. Well, I wrote that tweet, so maybe it was funnier at the time. If you really like the show and you want to support us, actually, Brian, I'm going to switch out of my podcasting voice into my regular voice, if that's okay.
Okay.
So, all right. Hey everybody, Elon here. Just want to throw it out there. Normally every week I like to say, oh, if you want to support us, it would be really nice. I know I talk about all the different perks we give you to become a patron. We talk about how you get the bonus content, you join the Facebook group. But like, to be real, we're putting a lot of work into this show, just FYI. Brian and I spent a lot of today putting together the show, preparing it. So if you want to be nice, throw us $5. Like $5, it's not a lot to you, it's not a lot to us, but it also just lets us know that people appreciate the work we're putting into the show. So just going to throw it out there. You get all the good perks. Also, you get that good feeling knowing you're supporting a podcast that is working hard to put out good content for you. So keepingkarlsson.com/patron, if you don't mind. Check it out.
Good job.
Okay. Back to podcasting. That's all I got for you this week. So why don't we cue the outro music? And Brian, why don't you go ahead and read us the credits?
Just a second. All right, this episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dobber Hockey and supported by our patrons, including our newest one, David B. Welcome aboard. It was researched with help from Dobber Hockey, Frozen Pool, Dobber Prospects, Corsica, The Athletic, Hockey Reference, Natural Stat Trick, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, Roto World, and Fantrax.
Great job, as always, Brian. We will catch all of you. Well, the patrons will catch next Thursday for our mailbag show, and we'll catch the rest of you on Sunday for another episode. You could always join us live for our episodes at keepingkarlsson.com/live. Yeah, see you then.
Until then, keep on keeping Karlsson.
Boom. And I don't think there's anyone left in the chat room. Maybe Dave, but it's been a while since someone wrote something.
It was a quiet night.
It's because there was a lot of people. I think we had too many stops, or maybe I don't know. Maybe they just had other things too. That's probably more likely. By the way, Brian, did you catch that thing in the chat room? How after you mentioned The Athletic, everyone was like booing you and saying how The Athletic is terrible?
No, I didn't look at the. I lost track of the chat pretty early on.
Okay. Actually, maybe now that I'm realizing it, I probably shouldn't have that in. Okay, because this is still actually available. But anyways, we should talk about that later. I'm curious. I actually didn't know. I don't know what people think. Like, you send me these articles. I like read our Twitter. I almost have to read like tech articles for my job. I generally don't read like long write-ups about fantasy hockey stats. So
I'm scrolling up and I'm confused. I didn't know people hated it.
Yeah, I think that there's some backlash against The Athletic. I'd be curious to hear from the pages. We should make a post on the Facebook group and ask people like, what do they think about The Athletic? I'd be curious.
There was backlash because like their owner did like a piece in the New York Times and like ripped apart, like saying we're gonna like bleed newspapers dry because they're like messing it up and we're gonna do it right, which is like, it was off-putting. I didn't love it as a subscriber, but their content is still pretty good.
I guess. Well, yeah, I'll be curious to see what they say. I'll have to trust you. Okay. Bye, everyone. Thanks again. It looks like Christian was here. He was just multitasking. So
and Dave.
Appreciate it. And Dave. Awesome. Thank you. Bye, guys.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.